nice way to start our day. And there'll be some challenges working in this smaller ring, but if you'll just bear with me, I'll be able to work through it and get the cattle described for you. Really nice set of heifers to start off with, and congratulations to all the young exhibitors for their new projects and new heifers they've purchased. This red kind of tan heifer, she surfaces to the top pretty easy for me. Yes, she's the heavier heifer in the class. She has that advantage, but take that aside and you study that heifer and you watch this one when she gets out and goes. You watch how her foot hits the ground from her rear foot to her front foot. Very nice there. Big square hip in her. She's angular through her front. Big top, big hip. Still has some curvature to her rib and some femininity to her. So I think just a combination and logical female to start the class with. Congratulations to that young man. After that, there's three females I think that you can kind of jingle up a little bit, and probably different judges are going to place them all different ways. To me, the female that's the most angular and feminine and sound comes next. But with that said, she's also the flattest and lightest muscled female out here. You read her down her top, particularly in her forerib. She's quite a bit greener, but I like the angularity. I like the structural design of that female. Really sound, maternal, angular built kind of female. Now, if you need to add some power and some dimension, these next two females are extremely big-hipped and wide-pinned. I studied on those two quite a bit, but I think the strength of top and strength of spine, young man in the straw hat, let's go ahead and lead your heifer around. As you read that female, I think she's stronger right behind her shoulder, stronger just how she hooks up there in her spine. When she gets out and goes, she's nice enough in terms of her foot design. You read her in terms of slopes and angles, she gets out and moves correctly. Big body, big hip. And same thing with this next heifer in terms of hip width, in terms of pin to pin width. That one, though, she runs just a hair downhill. She's not quite as strong right behind her shoulder. But I think that's going to be a really nice cow prospect for this young lady, because you read her in terms of just mass and dimension, maybe not quite as stout right there behind her shoulder, not quite as strong in her forerib compared to the one right in front of her, but she is more attractive about her head, a little flatter neck kind of a female. So there's some give and take in second, third, and fourth, and I don't argue that trio of cattle very hard. I think there's some things as those cattle mature that yet those three will probably go back and forth. Real maternal, real flat-necked, angular kind of a female we conclude with. She's one that we want to just raise her pin set up just a touch. She doesn't handle you read her right from the center of her spine to her hip. But for this young lady as a cow prospect, in terms of just maternal, big-bodied, feminine, angular female, she's going to be a nice cow prospect for the young lady. Congratulations to each of them.
Thank you, Jeremy. Results in class number 1: in first place, Alyssa Vanek; second, Tanner Vanek; third place, Kason Yeager; in fourth, Cheyenne Shepard; and in fifth place, Stephanie Pruitt. We'll now have class 2 and welcoming Jeremy to Billings, Montana in the NILE.
sometimes my filter that goes from my brain to my mouth doesn't always work, and I'm going to apologize in advance for that. But this is like looking at a class of fifth grade boys. Okay, they're all shapes and sizes, and that's just what went through my mind of, holy smokes, what are you going to do here? And that's just, I think the best description is that there's a lot of variation in the cattle, and from top to bottom, this is a good set of females. There's quality in all 5 of the cattle, and I'm just going to describe the differences to you and tell you what my priorities are. Now, that yellow heifer that you have up here, yep, going to work those front feet back quite a bit, because otherwise she's going to look really soft-topped, and she's not. The thing about this heifer is that she's a combination of the 2 females right behind her, and she's extra long ribbed, and she's going to have to body down through her center section. But what I see in this female is that there's lots of parts and pieces that I like, and one of 2 things is going to happen here with that female. She's going to grow and assemble those parts and pieces, and it's all going to come together, or she's going to end up being really piecey and kind of ugly. I'm not sure which one how to tell you and describe it today, but what I see in this female is that she's big top, really big hipped, sound enough when she gets out and goes, and she's attractive. Young lady, you have to kind of hold that female together, because she does have some pieces, and sometimes she gets where she shows you that. Her best look is when she's on the move. She kind of collects herself, and I think as she fills up and matures, the rib shape is right, the muscularity is right, and the attractiveness up front is right, combined with how her skeleton's put together. Now, with that said, I'd raise her pins up. She does get a little plainer in terms of how she sets her hind leg, the curvature to her hind leg, but I think she's practical and has a show ring look. The black female is the challenge for me. I said to the young lady, I said, she almost has kind of a purebred look to her in terms of being a little later maturing. She's of the trio of females, the top 3 here, she's the latest maturing female that's the soundest. And you get that female out, and she's just the athlete, really nice at the ground in terms of flex and angularity. And all that flex and angularity comes because she's also the lightest muscled of that trio out here. You read her, she's flat at her stifle, but I think what some of that flatness is she's very juvenile. She's just green in her condition. She's one, though, I think that female, that soundness, is a big bred. You look at her a year from now, that's a really neat, sound female. Now, she's going to have to body down. She doesn't have the curvature to her rib shape as the 2 females on either side of her, but she's exceptionally sound, very angular and maternal. A little concerning to me with the length of cannon that we see, and she is pretty green in terms of condition, so she's going to have to do her job of bodying down and maturing, but that soundness, that elegant look, I think is just kind of a logical fit for me. The black and white female you love just from her mid-rib back, big and bold and lots of curvature to her rib, stout bone, stout-footed female. This young lady has to really work at keeping that female's head up, and part of that is because that female's head comes out of her shoulder just a touch lower, and you read her from the top of her neck all the way to the base of her shoulder. She's just a little deeper there. But if you want one that's bold-ribbed and stout and powerful in her design, you can gravitate to that female. I'd stretch her out, pull her neck out of her shoulder just a little bit to compete with further with those 2 in front of her. Good cow prospect, though, if you want to make some cattle that are clubby kind of cattle that still have some body and rib. I think that one does it really well. Let's bring that gray female around. Y'all can go ahead and exit out. This gray female, very kind of a meat and potatoes female, really, really sound. She's as sound as the black female that stands second there when you watch her in terms of just how she gets out and tracks, really soft in her skeletal build. She's one that her tail head sets on the back and upper part of her hip. We want to flatten that tail head just a little bit, but if you want to say one that's round rib, big hipped, and has a nice cow look to her, you get that with this female. Her balance is a little off because of that tail head setting high, just a touch plainer down low in her throat, but just a very, very practical, functional kind of a cow prospect, keep you in the business kind of a female. This next one is one that you really like when she's stopped, and you back away from her, she gets a little tubular in her rib shape. We want to see that female have just a touch more rib, but really the bigger thing I'd change is I'd like to realign how her hind feet set to the ground. When you watch her go away from you, she closes up just a little bit behind. We want to square her hind legs up, but real attractive female. I think this is one that time is going to be to her benefit because she's attractive, long spine. She's sound. We just want to square her up on those hind legs just a touch. So all of those cattle I like really well. There's pieces and parts that have some breeding opportunity and diversity for the young folks in this class. A little challenging to sort through. Congratulations to everyone.
Thank you, Jeremy. Results of class number 2: in first place, Melissa Eastman. Second, Haley Dennison. Third, Danny Hess. Fourth place, Lexi Dennison. And in fifth place, Kelly Cordill. We'll now select our champion and reserve champion female. Out of class 1, we need Alyssa Vanek and Tanner Vanek. And in class 2, Melissa Eastman and Haley Dennison.
As these cattle make a circle and come around, I'm going to give this young man leading this first heifer a little bit of grief. Young man, you're in Montana and you're wearing a straw hat in October. What's the deal? Let's come on around and just stop back over on that far side. I'm pretty consistent. You'll see the next couple days as I sort cattle, we look at them in terms of their foot and their shape and their angularity and their skeletal build, and that's because these cattle ultimately have to go out and be cows and then think about body and dimension. And so the female, that young man making the turn, even though he's wearing a straw hat today, here I'm going to give him grief, but he's going to have champion female on our female show today. Congratulations. That brings the white heifer into contention for reserve, and then the female that wins the second class. And really, it's pretty challenging because you evaluate those cattle in terms of type and kind. I think the balance advantage goes to the white heifer. The muscle advantage goes to the second class winner. I really like the soundness and the balance that we see in that white heifer. Young man, you're going to have the reserve heifer. Congratulations.
Champion female goes to Alyssa Vanek. Reserve champion, Tanner Vanek. We'll now call class 1 of the steers to the staging area. Dylan Leiser, Tylee Gerdes, Kiona Yeager, Michaela Leiser, Kaylee Linvold, and Anna David. can start lining up class number 2 of the steers. We need Melissa Eastman, Stephanie Pruitt, Kinley Lizer, Kimber Bull, Travis Moniz, and Trevor Allen. Kinley Lizer, we need you to the staging area for class number 2 if you're in the building. Kinley Lizer.
I'm not one that does a lot of swapping, but I think this is just going to fit logically. The paint-bodied steer is one from a presentation and balance standpoint. You really have to like that one. Really wide-pinned. It has a nice prospect look to him, neat-necked, and the thing that there's lots of questions about the future on this calf. And to have as much shoulder as he does, he's going to have to keep the point of his shoulder tucked in. He runs downhill ever so slightly from his tail head to his shoulder, and he's a little short cannon. So that calf's going to have to be grown for a while in terms of just getting him to a mature weight. But in this particular class, he's really attractive, balanced, sound, and really wide pinned. He's the one that you have to ask yourself which one you'd take home. He's the one I'd take home, so that's where my decision is. I think you're just going to have to manage that guy to kind of grow him along before you get him fat, because there's lots of good there. The challenge it comes in the next pair. You have to start making some decisions. The black steer to me is very fresh and prospecty. I like him better from his mid-rib back than I do the white steer. He holds his top more correctly, just a little better in his spine. Now where I'd change the black steers, you read him just in the lower part of his chest floor. That guy has just a touch of chest, but he's really sound, big top, square-ended, fresh. I like the pin set, the width that he has as he goes away from you. Just reads a little fresher to me about his head and neck, and I like just the future projection of that guy. I think he's more like our class winner in that way. The big, bold, stout, powerful calf stands here in third, and he is huge-topped and really expressive in the lower part of his stifle. I'd like to realign that guy's front feet. As you study him at the ground, he wants to toe out just a little bit, want to bring those front feet back in. A little plainer-headed kind of guy. He's always going to be plainer-headed, but he's also going to be one that's big-hipped and big-boned, going to have some management opportunity there on his front feet. But if you want one that's stout and powerful, he's going to be that kind of guy. So there's some things there in each of the calves you like, some challenges that you can go with. Next steer that comes around, young lady, solid. Y'all can go ahead and lead those out, and you can lead this fourth place steer out. This guy, in Texas, we'd call him an Angus prospect because he looks like he's going to be polled, has a look to him that he is going to just come with time. And you really study that guy, and he's just very, very green in terms of his condition. He's a little flatter at his stifle, and that's what gets him here today compared to those three in front of him. I'd like to power him up in the lower part of his body cavity in terms of his bone work as well, but that's one that time and feed are going to be to his advantage because the skeletal build is right on that calf. He's very sound. He's attractive, level-hipped. He's going to, the skeleton says that he's going to power up and get stouter. Today, he's just a little flatter when you get him out here. The Baldy that comes next has a power advantage. He's wider from pin to pin and at the base. When you read that guy, we want to change him some from a balance standpoint. He's a little deeper necked and shorter necked relative to the ones that stand on either side of him, but he's huge topped and really stout and expressive in his muscle design, just a little rounder in his muscle, both at his hip and his shoulder. So he's one that we're going to have to manage through there in terms of just not getting his front end to where it shortens up on us. But he's stout, he's bold-legged, and you like that about him. Young Land's green, the shorthorn marked steer. He's one that just needs time, because you read this guy, he's really sound. There's some expression to his loin. He's long-necked. He's strong-hipped. You like all those things about him. And young man, this is one that you just take home. You feed him and feed him and feed him, and he's one that's going to power up, because he tracks away with some width. He has some top shape to him, some chest floor width. All the signals are there that this calf has the ability to stouten and power up. He's going to be a good one for the young man today. He just gets outpowered, out-conditioned probably is another way to describe it. Nice class, some challenges there to sort through.
Thank you, Jeremy. Results of class number 1 in the steer calves. First place goes to Kiona Yeager. Second, Callie Lindvold. Third, Anna David. Fourth, Tylee Gerdes. And fifth place, Michaela Leiser. We'll now have class 2 entering the ring. Melissa Eastman, Stephanie Pruitt, Kinley Leiser, Kimber Bull, Travis Moniz, and Trevor Allen. I just want to give you a reminder today in our show, if you are reserve champion, you need to go down below into the expo building and fill out your sheet of paper at the table there by the office, and you can get your jacket ordered. You'll have a jacket coming if you are reserved today, so make sure you go down below and get that ordered. Thank you.
Most logical thing we can do in this class is start with the tan colored steer, and he's that one that combines show ring appeal with some practicality. You read him in terms of muscularity and balance, and how he handles his structure. Very nice in terms of all of those traits. He's one that has a juvenile look in terms of his rib and condition, and I think there's some future to that steer. Big-footed, stout design kind of individual. He's a bit more attractive in terms of just neck and shoulder build compared to that gray steer. And the gray steer, I'll be honest, he's the one that's a challenge for me to decide what to do with. You like that calf from just rib and body, and if you're going to have a feedlot full of steers, and you say, well, he's just kind of a meat and potatoes guy. I think the difference is that guy's the most mature compared to the two on either side of him. He's one that has a bit more condition and maturity about his head, and you read him, he's real soft-ribbed. But what I like about him is you stand right behind him and you watch him travel. He's sound, he's wide at the ground, he's big pinned, big-hipped. Maybe not as much of a show ring look to him, and that's where that maturity comes into play. He's a little deeper at the top of his neck to the base of his neck. Just depends on where you're going to end up with him. If he's got a year to go to come back here, or a fall show, that guy's pretty mature already. We're going to have to slow him down compared to the ones on either side of him. If we're going to a show sooner than that, he's well on the way. So interesting individual, one that we have to start with up there. As I said, he's the combination guy, but the tan calf is he combines the next two. The gray calf is the challenge. The one that's really that has that show ring appeal comes back around here in third. That blaze face steer is just super level topped and strong hipped. You like that about him. He gets out and floats around the ring in terms of slope and angularity to his shoulder and his knee. The soundness is there. When you watch him go away, he's just not as mature as those two in front of him, and he gives up just some lower base width. And as you would expect, might want to lengthen his front end out just a touch. I just don't see quite as much power there as the two in front of him. But that one, I think, has as much future as any out here in the top trio in terms of just being juvenile in his look. Strong top, square hipped. His difference between the fourth steer, young lady does a nice job with this steer. The blaze face steer, it just has more power right out of the top of his shoulder and into his forerib. This black steer, while he's very attractive from the side, he's long fronted, he's one that has some upper hip width. You want to pull him apart right behind his shoulders. He's more concave there, just narrows through his hole from his hip forward. Want to just power him up and strengthen him right there in his forerib. One that has lots of soundness to him. Young lady does a nice job with him. His future is going to be really good, so hang in there with that guy. Lots of good there. Extra long spine steer comes in next in this gray one, and you like that guy in terms of, again, strength at top from his midrib back to his hip. He's probably as nicely designed as any in the class. Where we want to change him is again, right behind his shoulder, and some of that comes with he's just pretty green, but he just gets too flat right out of his shoulder and doesn't hook up there maybe as well as we'd like. Tuck his chest plate up a touch, but he's long spine, attractive from the side, going to be a sound, good-looking prospect for the young lady. And then we conclude with one that gets a bit flatter as he goes away from you. This is a guy that just needs some time. He's one that's pretty green when you read him, both in terms of muscle shape and just body condition. He's sound, he's nice-necked, he has some upper body width, so that tells me that calf has the ability to just widen up and power up. Today, he gets too flat in his stifle. As he goes from, he gets kind of closed up. So good class of cattle. Congratulations to all the young folks with their new steers.
Thank you, Jeremy. Results of class number 2. In first place, Travis Moniz. Second, Trevor Allen. Third, Melissa Eastman. Fourth, Stephanie Pruitt. And in fifth place, Kinley Lizer. We'll now have class 3 enter in the ring. Paisley Reynolds, Lauren Dewey, Brady Bull, Jordan Christensen, and Kelly Cordill.
black steer that wins this class has a lot of presence to him. You like that steer's balance. When you read him from his chest floor back to his flank, you project him out into the future. That balance is going to be a big advantage. But more importantly, he has more flex to his hock. And when he gets out and goes, he just is a little softer in terms of his design to both his hock and his knee. There's some hair there right in front of his pastern that I just trimmed just a little bit because at first I thought he wanted to knuckle forward, but he actually doesn't. It's just that there's some hair there in the front. He actually is relaxed enough at his pastern there. But just the balance of that steer, the overall look and appeal, the presence, I think allows him to win. The red steer, the tan steer here that stands in second is equally as powerful in terms of top shape and pin width and stifle push. Want to see that guy move a little differently in his hock. He just wants to throw his hock more so than get out and really reach with it. But in terms of muscularity and practical rib shape, you really like that guy. He's going to have lots of future to him. I like the build. I think we just got to kid it. Don't put him up on his toes and just let him have some heel depth to him. And that calf is sure enough going to be one that's going to be really competitive. Just doesn't quite balance up quite as nicely as that black steer. Some little things that you want to tuck his chest in a little bit. And like I said, that flex just is the difference there. One that stands there in third, the Blaze Face, it is a lot like the two in front of him in terms of rib shape and dimension. You get that guy out on the go, and he just closes up a little bit as he goes away from you. Doesn't have the power to the top of his hip or lower stifle as the two right in front of him. Has a good feeding look to him, really attractive, sound enough. And then one that we'll conclude with is big-bodied and soft-made, long-hipped. We want to assemble the parts better on that guy, power him up in terms of muscle shape, want to strengthen his top and just pick him up at his pins. Going to be just kind of a practical, good-doing guy there. So congratulations, all four of those young exhibitors.
Thank you, Jeremy. Results of class number 3. First place, Lauren Dewey. Second, Paisley Reynolds. Third, Kelly Cordill. And fourth, Brady Bull. We'll now have back first and seconds out of these classes for your Grand and Reserve champion steer. Out of Class 1, we need Keone Yeager and Callie Lindvold. Class 2, Travis Moniz and Trevor Allen. And Class 3, Lauren Dewey and Paisley Reynolds.
Just a couple of quick comments as we conclude this show, and I talk about this at all the at the junior exhibitor shows that I sort at, and each of you that are here, whether you be an exhibitor or a parent ringside, want to encourage you to remember that if you show cattle, you are a part of the beef industry. And I venture to say here in this part of the country, there's probably a good jag of you that go back to ranches, and I think that's important to recognize. There may be some of you that are from more metropolitan areas, but all of you, no matter where you're from, have an opportunity when you're back in your community to talk about the beef industry. And that's something that, particularly where I'm at in South Texas, I try and encourage folks a lot. But as you're out in your community, whether it be that you're at school and you're talking to somebody in the community, a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, talk about the positives of the beef industry. Talk about the positives of agriculture. Because I tell you what, folks, there's places outside of Montana that they don't agree with our way of life. They don't agree with the things that we do in agriculture. And if you young people don't take the initiative to talk about agriculture, be stewards, and be willing to have those hard conversations with kids that maybe say, well, I'm a vegan or I'm a vegetarian or I don't believe in this or that, your kids are not going to be able to come back here and show at the NILE down the road. We won't have agriculture as we know it today, particularly in the beef industry. So my challenge is to you to go out and have those conversations with folks around you, and don't be afraid to educate yourself on I say learn three things that about 3 beef facts, whether it be about protein and iron or about how we're stewards of the land and conservationists. Doesn't matter to me, but have a couple of talking points and be willing to go out and have those conversations with your talking points. So with that said, I'm going to ask folks ringside, put your hands together. I'm going to go out and pick your champion here. The trio of cattle that come out as our class winners, there's some variation in these cattle in terms of where they're going to end up. I think there's some decisions to be made. You have to ask yourself, there's a little paint-bellied steer up here in the front. Does he have enough grow? He's fairly short cannon and just one that has a look of being fairly conservative framed. But, boy, he's jet-necked and fresh designed and really sound. There's lots of things I like about him. He's just one that has some management opportunities to get him to grow. The yellow steer in the middle, a big top, big hip, real stout-ended kind of individual, one that has big paws, we'd call it, in terms of foot and bone. You like those things about him. And then the black steer is one that has, more middle than the one right in front of him, but still nice top, nice hip, balances up really well. I wonder just from a slope and angle standpoint on that guy where he's going to end up. I think there's some management opportunities there too. So each one of these have things that I like about him. Each one has some things that I question. But a good lineup there in the top 3. Our seconds are very competitive as well. So I'm going to go out and tell you which one is my preference today.
Your champion steer goes to Travis Moniz, Reserve Kiona Yeager.